Once upon a time, there was a little girl named Diane. In many ways, she was just like any other child. She loved to draw, read stories, and play in the park. But Diane had something that made her very special. She was born with green hair, green as fresh spring grass. When she was little, her parents always told her that her hair was a priceless gift, a sign that she was destined for great things. Her mother would brush her green locks every evening and whisper, "You are like a rare flower, Diane. One day everyone will see how wonderful you are." But when she started school, Diane discovered that not everyone saw her green hair as a gift. On her first day of school, when she sat quietly at her desk, a boy behind her pulled one of her strands and giggled, "Look, her hair is like a bush." The children around him began to laugh. Diane felt her cheeks grow hot and tears moistening the corners of her eyes. She tried to remember her mother's words, but the children's laughter was too loud. As she grew older, Diane tried her hardest to find her place. She was intelligent and talented, but wherever she went, her green hair attracted attention and became a reason for mockery. One day, she learned that the school had a chess club. Diane played chess with her father every Sunday and had become quite skilled. With a heart full of hope, she went to the first meeting of the club. She entered the room timidly, where several children were already seated in front of chessboards. For a moment, no one noticed her, but then a girl with pigtails pointed at her and whispered something. Soon, the whole room began to snicker. "Maybe your green queen will get lost in your curls," shouted a boy, and everyone burst into laughter. Diane rushed out of the room with tears in her eyes. A few weeks later, she heard that a dance group was forming. Diane loved dancing. She moved around her room every evening, imagining herself on a big stage. Perhaps here she would find friends who could see beyond her green hair. But when she stepped into the dance hall, history repeated itself. "Look, the dancing salad has arrived," someone shouted, and everyone started laughing. Diane retreated again, feeling more alone than ever. When she turned 12, Diane still hoped to find friends who would accept her as she was. One day, a new boy in her class named Alex invited her to meet at the library to work together on a project. Diane's heart leaped with joy. Finally, someone who seemed not to care about her strange hair. She carefully prepared for the meeting, choosing her favorite clothes. At the library, Alex seemed friendly at first. They discussed the project and found some interesting books. But then, when Diane bent down to take a book from a lower shelf, Alex burst into laughter. "You know," he said between chuckles, "you should go to the forest to find friends there. You look so much like a bush that the trees might mistake you for one of their own." Diane felt her heart breaking in her chest. She dropped the book from her hand and ran from the library with tears streaming down her cheeks. She ran and ran without looking where she was going, wishing only to be as far away as possible from people and their cruel laughter. Without realizing it, Diane's steps led her to the edge of the town, where a dense and quiet forest began. She had never been so far from home alone before, but at that moment she didn't care. She entered among the trees, letting their cool shade envelop her. The forest was different from any place Diane had ever seen. Sunbeams slipped between the leaves, creating patches of light on the moss-covered ground. The air smelled of fresh earth and wild flowers. It was quiet, but not an oppressive silence. It was a silence full of life. Diane walked deep into the forest until she found a small clearing. She sat on a log and began to cry freely, letting all the pain and loneliness rise to the surface. "Why do I have to be so different?" she whispered between sobs. "Why can't I have normal hair, like everyone else?" As she cried, Diane didn't notice at first the subtle change around her. The grass beneath her feet seemed to lean slightly toward her. The wild flowers turned their petals in her direction, and the leaves of the trees rustled in a rhythm that strangely resembled a whisper. "Don't cry," the forest seemed to say. "You're home now." Diane looked up, amazed. For the first time, she felt that she truly belonged somewhere. In the following days, Diane returned to the forest whenever she could. There, no one laughed at her green hair. On the contrary, it seemed that nature itself celebrated it. One afternoon, while sitting in her favorite clearing, Diane noticed something strange. Wherever she rested her hands on the ground, small bright flowers sprouted. When she touched a tree, the bark seemed to glow slightly under her fingers. "What's happening?" she wondered aloud. As if waiting for this question, a gentle breeze passed through the clearing, bringing with it a sweet murmur. "You are one of us, Diane. You always have been. Your green hair is not a mistake. It's a sign that you belong to the forest." Diane stood still, not believing it, but somewhere deep in her heart she knew it was true. She had always felt more at ease among plants and trees than among people. "What must I do?" she asked. "Just accept who you truly are," whispered the forest. Diane closed her eyes and took a deep breath. She felt a warm energy flowing through her body, starting from her toes and slowly rising. When she opened her eyes, she saw that her feet had begun to transform into roots, anchoring deep into the forest floor. She wasn't afraid. On the contrary, she felt peaceful and fulfilled, as if everything happening now was meant to be. Her arms stretched toward the sky, transforming into graceful branches covered with green leaves that perfectly matched the color of her hair. In a few moments, the transformation was complete. Where Diane had once stood, there now rose a young and beautiful tree, with foliage of a brilliant green and a smooth bark that seemed to glow slightly in the sunlight. But Diane hadn't disappeared. She was there, in every leaf that danced in the wind, in every branch that stretched toward the sky, in every root that drew life from the earth. She was, at last, exactly where she belonged. Birds came to build nests in her branches, squirrels ran up and down her trunk, wildflowers grew around her roots. For the first time in her life, Diane was truly happy. And even now, if you go to that forest and find a tree with unusually bright green foliage, you can be sure you have found Diane. If you stay quiet and listen carefully, you might even hear a gentle whisper in the rustling of the leaves. Accept yourself as you are. Find the place where you truly belong. There you will find happiness. The end.